Can you hear me okay, Stu?
Yeah, I can hear you, Tom.
Fantastic. So good morning / good afternoon, everyone, and Happy New Year. Thank you for joining us for today's session on Tenzig Manager. My name is Tom Dodds. I'm the EMEA Marketing Manager for Tenzig Technology, and I'm based here in the UK, which is very wet, cold and windy at the minute. But I'm delighted to be joined by our very own ray of sunshine, Stuart Hales. Good morning, Stuart.
Morning, Tom. Thank you.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm not
good,
too bad, thank you.
Good.
The weather pretty cold
yeah.
and wet.
Yeah, it is very dismal, isn't it? But tell us about what you do for Tenzig, Stuart.
Yeah, so I joined Tenzig in 2019, just before the COVID pandemic. So I work in the Tenzig UK Leicester office as a pre-sales engineer in the pre-sales team, helping out the sales team with customers, new customer prospects, and various other functions as well.
Fantastic. I think you have a bit of an update for us today on the webinar. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. So we've got some great new features for you today to kick the new year off. I'm sure there will be plenty more as well throughout 2023 to follow. The main content that we've actually got for today is pre-recorded because it was done by myself and a colleague in the US called Mathew Phillips, who is our technical process and training manager. So he will actually be in bed right now, so it wasn't really appropriate for him to join. So we have pre-recorded that part. So we'll kick that off in a little while. But if you have any questions during the main session, please feel free to ask them, and we'll come back at the end with a live Q&A to try and go through as many of those as possible. You'll also see as well in the handout section that we've also got some files on there for you to be able to download. So you should find there some specification sheets for the Tenzig Manager and the 6000 series hardware, as well as our full product brochure as well. And finally, there is another document in there which will be explained partially throughout this webcast, which is basically a migration document up to the 16.4 firmware, which we're talking about as well. So feel free to grab those off at your leisure as well.
Fantastic, thank you, Stuart. And I think before we kick off with the content, we just got a couple of quick poll questions we want to ask the audience.
That's
So
right.
if you could please answer, that would be really helpful for us. So the first one I'm just going to launch now.
How did you hear about today's webcast?
Yeah, I can see the responses rolling in, so thank you for that. Give it another couple of seconds. Fantastic. And then we've just got our second poll question, and it's: are you currently using Tenzig thin or zero clients? A large percentage of people who are using Tenzig devices, which is good. Just a couple more seconds. Fantastic, I'll close that one down. So thank you for answering those for us. Stuart, I think I'll close my camera and microphone and hand over to yourself to put the content forward, and then we'll join everyone back at the end of the content.
That's it, yeah. So some great interaction there. So thanks for filling out those poll questions. We'll jump into the main content now, but please stay on till the end, and then we'll have that live Q&A. And I believe also Tom may have some details about the Amazon gift card as well. So we'll see you shortly.
Thank you.
So for those not familiar with Tenzig joining the webcast today, we're a solely focused thin and zero client vendor supporting the major VDI platforms as well as cloud-based environments. So Citrix, VMware, Microsoft AVD and RDP, and Amazon Workspaces and Teradici. We have our global headquarters in the US in Phoenix, Arizona. And for our EMEA region, we have our head office based in Leicester in the UK. We also have satellite offices in Australia and Germany also. The company was founded back in 2003 and has long-standing partnerships with Citrix, VMware and Microsoft, assisting and working with them on new developments over time. We have full certified Thin and Zero clients for VMware and Citrix, and you can see more details of these available on our website. And we also have certified sales team members and technical support team members for each of the VDI platforms as well. We have a number of different case studies and customer reviews available on our website, which can be reached using the link on the slide here at the bottom. So for today's webcast, what we're going to be really looking at here is the HTML GUI, which is a major enhancement to our in-house operating systems and also the Tenzing Manager application suite. We're also going to be looking at some of the new features that have been added into the Tenzing Manager over the past year. So these include the ability now to install add-ons to the base firmware on clients. We've also got the ability to download log files from clients centrally to the Tenzing Manager server. There's also the ability to see the last user that logged on to a VMware session through the Tenzing Manager console. And then finally, we can now have the ability to be able to send system messages to the in-house based Linux clients. We'll also have a HTML GUI demonstration, which Matt will perform. And then we'll finish off with the webcast looking at a summary of what we've covered and also a Q&A session for any questions that you guys might want answering. Okay, so let's jump into looking at the HTML GUI then. And for this, what I'll do is just hand over to Matt, and he'll be able to give us a bit more detail about the current situation with our Linux-based operating systems.
Thanks for that, Stu. So let's talk about kind of where we're at right now, and then that'll orient everybody, and then we can talk about where we're going and why you all are here. So our current GUI locally now is the ICE Windows Manager, and we use a custom Qt UI. And you interact with that GUI and that unit via the MMC console. And we list some firmware versions there, so 10.12, 12.0, 12.1, 16.1, 16.3. So obviously this has been the way we've been doing things for a while, and of course Windows IoT devices. So what we're doing now is we're going to move over, and you're going to interact with the new HTML GUI using the web console. And that firmware version is going to run in the 16.4.x using a manager version 5.0 or 5.x.x.
And I think with some of those local operating system firmware versions, they mainly the older 32-bit firmware, aren't they?
Yep, correct. So with that, if you have some of those older 32-bit firmware versions and you kind of got a mixed environment right now, you're going to run both consoles. Not all of these are 32-bit, so the 16.1 and the 16.3, those are the 64-bit, and then obviously 16.4, where we have the HTML GUI, that's 64-bit too. But at any rate, if you're running an environment where you have some of the older here at the top that says the MMC console, you'll still continue to use the MMC console to manage those units and specifically to edit the configuration. But we're transitioning to where the web console is going to be our main console, and you'll use that to interact with the HTML GUI, which sort of makes sense, doesn't it? Right, to have a web browser based manager, that interacts with the HTML GUI, everything being HTML. So the last bit there is the point. Having both consoles is useful as you're migrating to the new GUI, or in mixed environments when you're running those different versions.
And currently, the HTML GUI is available for PeakOS and Repurp OS, isn't it? So we're just completing that transition now with the NOS 0 client operating system.
Yep, good point, Stuart. So right now, where you can go ahead and you can contact support, and we can get you an image so that you can re-image your unit to that 16.4 HTML GUI, but only for the PCOS and our POS units, which is our repurposing software for third-party hardware. So just kind of some examples here. So continuing with the current situation. So you can kind of see here on the left, we have what it would look like locally on the unit in the GUI if you were to go and configure those display settings. On the right here, we're in the MMC console and we're editing those same display settings. And you'll notice that there's a different look and feel to both of those. All the information is there, right? But it kind of has this different look and feel. I'm going to show you here in a minute what we're doing, but we're going to keep everything the same so that when you're in the console or when you're in the GUI, everything is going to have the same look and feel. So kind of burn that into your memory how that looks, where you kind of have a larger GUI on one side where you just have some drop downs here on the right hand side. To continue on, so we're going to have the 16.4.x branch, and it's going to be common across the board for all our products. So PeakOS, aka PCOS, our Repurp OS, aka RPOS, and then the future NOS are all going to run on that 16.4.x firmware. You can have common connection types. There's going to be a look and feel across all those platforms that are the same. And then the idea is simplicity, right? Like, so you can keep everything easy, looking the same, and it's easy to move around from one to another and configure it. This is all based on the Ubuntu 20.04 kernel currently. So on top of that kernel, we're running an HTML GUI. We have an all new configuration wizard that you'll see when you boot up the unit, which includes improved wireless configuration, location detection. You'll see a new EULA in there to agree to, and more. The client configuration is performed in a web-based GUI, so that's like what we were talking about, being browser-based across the board, whether you're locally on the unit or you're in the web browser manager configuring the unit remotely. And we use a light HTTP server on the client side to accomplish all of that. Yeah, so you can remotely, as I said, configure it still. Template configuration is still performed in the Tenzig manager, but you're just going to do it in the web console. So kind of the point being with like this transition is that you're still going to be able to do all the same things, Tenzig things that you've been doing in the MMC console, but those items are just going to move over to the web browser. And we're going to make it easier for you if you go locally and make those changes, or if you make those changes in the web browser, everything is going to look the same.
Yeah.
A huge change is that we're using XML files to store the configuration now. So before we were using .ini files. So with the XML files, we can get a little more creative with the GUI. And with that, and this is pretty big. I like this part a lot. You like this part, Stuart? Where you can you don't have to reboot your client anymore.
Definitely, yeah. When you make
Yeah.
configuration changes, that's a big benefit of using the HTML GUI.
Yeah, and this was kind of a pain before. So if you were playing around with your configuration or trying to figure out what is going to fit your use case, and you were pushing out templates doing that, then it would require a reboot of the thin client, zero client. So that's no longer the case unless you're doing super low level changes like certain display layout changes and things. Which you could also, if you're working on those, just get in front of that unit, and you can do all those and figure out how that's going to work, and then you can go back to the web-based console. So this is what exactly is the new HTML GUI in the 16.4.x firmware branch. So as I said before, we had a Qt-based C++ program-based GUI that ran on top of the Ubuntu kernel. That used .ini files to store the configuration. What we're doing now is we're transitioning to a more modern HTML-based GUI that uses XML-based files for the configuration and the storage. That's kind of some of the under the hood stuff. So here's
more
that.
Today's standardized way of storing that information, isn't it? So
yeah, exactly, right. I mean, think about all the different products that you interact with in the browser today. I mean, everything is browser based anymore, or in somehow touches HTML or XML. So here's that slide that I promised you earlier that kind of goes into the layout. So you'll notice how there's a similarity. If you look on the left there, So that's going to be local on the unit. If you look in the gray window, and then if you go over here to the right, that's going to be how it looks in the manager. And you'll see how it looks. They're exactly the same.
Yeah,
between the
pretty
two.
much 1-to-1, isn't it?
Yeah, and so that's where those XML files come in, right? Because you download those, that's going to be your config. It's displayed in an HTML GUI on both sides. So boom, then you have a nice look and feel on no matter where you're at. So it just kind of keeps the learning curve down, so everything is easier that way. Yeah. So this is a bit how it works. So locally on the unit, we're using a Firefox browser, and then obviously when you're using the web console, you're going to use whatever your browser of choice is, Edge, Chrome, of course, Firefox. So it retrieves and saves the configuration locally on the system. So what this is talking about here is that from the manager, you're going to retrieve that XML file that I mentioned from the client, and then it's going to store it. And then you send configuration and GUI files to the manager server via CGI scripts. So you're going to be able to download GUI changes that we do in the firmware to your new manager without having to do a full-fledged manager update. So it used to be that the manager would kind of lag behind because we'd implement something new in firmware, and so then you'd wait a little bit and the manager would come, then you have to update your manager to use that, or at least to configure that feature to see an icon from the manager. That's gone now. So that's the hope here. So utilize PHP within the Linux Light PD server. And I guess this graphic, so this kind of shows the flow. So again, not a lot has changed here. So if you were managing a unit remotely, for instance, so you have your thin client on the left there, communicating via the cloud connector, which is essentially just a proxy server that you could have deployed in your DMZ or locally on your network. That's fine too. We prefer that. That's the best practice. That proxy server communicates with the main Tenzing manager server, and of course, you're going to store that configuration and those XML files and HTML files somewhere. So here we go. So what are the main benefits to customers transitioning to the HTML GUI over the older Qt interface? So as mentioned, you can change most of the configuration settings now via the manager without requiring a reboot. So that's really nice. And that's huge too if you're needing to do an update, in the middle of the day or something like that, and you have users about, you don't necessarily have to, if you've tested it, bother having them go and log off and go away because you're going to have to reboot the unit to push the config. Again, if you've tested it and everything is happy and working, good IT practices and all that. So under the Qt GUI, as we mentioned, we use INI files before, change the configuration setting, push the template required the reboot. Then, as I mentioned, one-to-one look, right? So one-to-one being what you see in the GUI locally on the unit looks the same when you go to the HTML web console, right? So if you're in either, the settings should look the same. You can make changes incrementally on the fly, right? Because no reboot is required. So you can troubleshoot something, try to work it out. Yeah, it's easier to layer templates now too. So let's say you could have a base template for something, that's your base configuration. And then maybe accounting needs to have their units launched to a different VMware Horizon pool, right? Versus maybe what you're doing in marketing. So then you could have separate templates just for those two settings that launch them to their marketing pool for the marketing people, and then the accounting pool for the accounting people, and then have your base template maintained separately. So with the web console, you can remotely edit and save those configurations. And so kind of the point of this slide is that we're now focusing on the web console versus the old software-based MMC console. So you can generate and edit those templates, the templates being the configuration files that you can push out to your clients. Retrieve the HTML files from the manager server. retrieves and sends those XML files, which is the configuration files that we talked about. It stores the base configuration and versioning for those GUI files also. So this is kind of like a pro tip here, like an FAQ. So if you're working in the web console and you get this 404 message, right, which IT people are kind of familiar with, you'd see in a browser, right? And again, so we're HTML based now, so everything is browser based. You can click that fancy button there that says HTML, which is just going to pull the latest HTML version into the web console. And the reason why we're doing all this is like I mentioned previously, it's for fluidity. So if we make a change in the firmware and we change the GUI a little bit, then you don't have to mess with necessarily updating your manager. You just click that update HTML file. And if by chance there was no HTML file stored at all, you're going to get that 404 error message. Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit already. So you're going to be interacting with the web console versus the software console. However, again, all your favorite features are still present and they look similar in the web console. So you can still remotely manage your units via Cloud Connector for your work from home people. With groups in the manager, same deal. You can still set up templates automatically pushed out the units. You can push firmware out automatically to units. You can set up auto naming. So you can automatically name your units. You pull one out of the box and you can fire all that stuff off. Let's say you have one sitting on the shelf, you have an incident, you need to just swap out the unit to get this person back up and running. Well, you deploy it, and if you set up your groups properly, you can push the firmware first to get it onto the current firmware version. Then it'll get hit with the template that gives it the proper configuration. You can also name it. We also offer auto rebooting, and then powering on the units works via Wake on LAN. There's requirements with there. If you wanted to use that, just contact support. So the point is that we're building upon where Tenzig has been, and we're just making it better, making it easier to use, modernizing everything that we have been doing by moving it over to HTML, putting it in a web browser. This is kind of a deeper dive slide, so I'm not gonna go into this too deep. But if you guys wanted to rewatch the video again, this kind of shows the flow of all the things we were talking about with XML files and HTML GUI files, and
Yeah.
with the Firefox browser being locally on the thin client. So then the question is, what products does the HTML GUI apply to? I got a fancy graph here. So basically, if you're on OS32, coming soon, we'll have the HTML GUI out with the 16.4.x. If you're on RPOS 32 or PCOS 32, then we're gonna re-image the device. And again, if you have questions about that, just call support, and we'll be able to help you out and get you the USB tool and the compressed image to be able to move your device over. And you can take a look at that graph there. So I've listed some models and which ones are going to require the reimage and which ones you'll be able to just update later. More information on that coming later with the PDF guide. So it's a little bit about RPOS. So you're on the 16.4.x is the new HTML GUI, right? Just like we've been talking about across the board, 16.4 firmware and an RPOS software is going to replace the 12.x 32-bit GUI, which was the old Qt GUI. There's an updated installer that supports USB and of course SSD drives. We now have basic UEFI BIOS support, so it's adding support for newer generation hardware for at least the basic UEFI stuff. We have full USB support, including live boot and configuration change. So if you want to live boot it versus install it onto a hard drive or whatever the permanent storage is there, you could do that too. We now do laptop support with RPOS. We do have a new hardware profiler for detecting hardware configurations. This is like chipsets, displays, networks. So really, as hardware has gotten more complex, if you're wanting to take that hardware and third-party hardware and turn it into a thin client or a zero client, that's kind of the point of this slide is that we've moved along our repurposing software also to give you the ability to do that by supporting all of those new bulleted point features, I suppose. You can call sales, get a demo of our POS. Highly recommend proof of concept. Again, good IT practices and all that. With more on that coming later. Again, contact sales if you're interested in demoing it. So what other Tenzing Manager features have been added? So this is all the new stuff, right, Stuart? So this is the new things that we're doing that you're able to do in the manager. So a new feature, we can download logs remotely in the manager. So in the before times, you would have to get a USB thumb drive and go to the command line to get logs. Well, that's no more with the modern GUI and the modern manager. You can right click on the unit and you can go to download logs, and that'll save it in your image store. And so you can go open up that package and check that out.
That makes it super useful for home worker locations.
Yep.
So we can pull off logs from those home worker devices if needed as well.
Right. Yeah, good point, right? Because I mean, otherwise you're kind of stuck there trying to troubleshoot their issue. We have a new last user field for VMware. So this field in the Tenzing Manager, the web console, shows the last user that was logged in on that box. So like kiosk situations, maybe you need to know who that last person was that was logged into that common used kiosk. Then that field is going to help you out with that. It's also logged on the unit, and with that download logs, you can go and grab that. You could push out system messages now, so you could set up a scheduled task. Basically, we've had customers want to give inspirational greetings every morning, or maybe you need to remind your end users not to open crazy emails, or something like that. So that's where this comes in. So you're able to schedule that so that a box will pop up and they'll have to read it and click OK. Something else that we've done, and this a lot of this is COVID pandemics based stuff too, is we have all these add-ons now. So these are third-party applications, so like Cisco WebEx. You can have an add-on that basically what it does is it allows you to offload all of the video and audio processing from your VDI to the unit. And then more importantly, it shifts that stream around your VDI. And so the end user experience is just light years better. Same thing with Zoom, Teams, Microsoft Teams, that's just built into Citrix Workspaces app and the VMware Horizon client. So no add-on needed there. And then we now support Control Up, and we have Liquidware also if you're needing statistics from your end users. So we support both of those products also with add-on.
I think also with the VDI platforms as well, the clients, when they're not available in the base firmware, new releases will be available as add-ons between the base firmware releases as well, won't they? Which are normally on a quarterly schedule, I believe, as well.
Yeah, good point. And if you're needing a new Zoom client or a new WebEx client, or you have a reason for that, let us know. We may have an add-on available already, or we may have a hot fix, which would be like a full firmware package that you would apply. If not, we want to know about it anyways and what kind of your situation is. So do call into support and let us know what your situation is and why you're needing that new client. No promises that we can get it to you necessarily, but a lot of times we do have it already because we try to stay pretty up to date. So this slide is going over that feature that we were talking about where you can download the logs. So you just right click on the unit and then it gets into your image store. The screenshot we have here is in the MMC console, but as we talked about, the look and feel should be the same. So if you right click on the unit, that download logs and the web console will be there too. This is about that last user field that we talked about. So if you need to know who that last person is that was logged into that unit, then we have a field now. You have to enable that field, so you got to right click and some boxes will come up and just check it and say you want to have that field present in your panel here. Important tip, it's not just there. These are the system messages, so inspirational messages, or if you like, remind them Mind your end users not to open those weird emails from princes of some faraway place. So that's what those are for. And see, you're just right clicking to access this feature and adding a scheduled task. You can do this at the group level, unit level. You can hold control and select a certain number of units or shift to select a group of units, and then just right click on those, add scheduled task, and you can go through, and in the drop down, you're going to click maintenance message, or excuse me, you're going to click under the action, display a message on the client. And an example here is we're giving them a maintenance message. Hey, there's going to be downtime. Or maybe you need to tell everybody, hey, reboot your units tonight, or remember to log off, right? Because you need to do some kind of update.
That's a good feature, and that's only available on the
Yeah.
Linux in-house operating systems, isn't it? Not with the Windows 10 IoT client.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, this is our stuff. So this is our GUI and our web console working together to make all this magic happen. So this is a picture of the website and where you would get those add-ons that we talked about. And you see there's quite the list here. There's a form that you would fill out. Just fill that out. Let us know who you are, what you want access to, and then we give you access to these various add-ons.
Now we've been through the PowerPoint slides and that, maybe it's a good idea to get into the demonstration and see these features in action.
Sounds good. Let's jump right in. All right, so the point here is we're going to kind of just show you some of the more actiony things that we've been talking about, so you can kind of just see how the workflow is going to work in the web console. So a lot of this stuff is going to be the same. Like if you want to retrieve a configuration from that unit, so just for people that aren't familiar with the Tenzig manager and our endpoints, so the configuration on the unit isn't pushed to the Tenzig manager in real time. So we're going to go out and we're going to grab it and we're going to say, hey, give me that brand new configuration or what your current configuration is. So you right click, go to configuration, and then you go to retrieve. You see how fast that was? You probably missed it. It was so quick. If you go down here, it just will pop into the jobs. It shows that we've retrieved the configuration from this unit here. And then you go, well, what are you going to do with that? Well, once you have that configuration, you can generate a template. So if you right click on the unit, go back to configuration, and you go generate template, this message will pop up the first time, and it's just saying that templates merge. So if you have a previous template on there and you want to apply a second template, like we kind of talked about earlier in the presentation, then it's only the settings that have changed on that second template that are going to get applied to the unit and actually change. All the other settings will remain the same. So I have some templates in here already, but let's give this one a new name. So we're going to say new demo template. The pro tip here is name your templates with your firmware version. So this is 16.4.33 in this case, and you can see it up here in that column. The reason for that is that templates, we say, are firmware version specific, so it's good to know where that template came from. So we hit create. This is asking you, do you want to retrieve the configuration one last time, just so you have the most up to date? You just say yes there. You'll see it, boom, see how fast that was, another job. We just generated that template. That's all there is to it. It really is that quick. So once you've set up the config that you're happy with and tested the heck out of it, those are the 2 steps to generate a template. So from there, you can go and we can talk about automation. So you could apply that template manually by going here and apply template. In fact, let's do that, and then I'll show you the automation. So we go to apply template, scroll down to the bottom here, and it was this guy here, new demo temp 16.4.33. We say okay. See the job. Boom, it's done, right? And you notice the unit didn't reboot. So in the older Qt GUI with the MMC console, your unit was going to reboot. So you can do on-the-fly changes. And then it updates here and it shows that this template has been applied to it. So let's let's talk some automation now. Actually, real quick, let's talk about mixed environments. So if you're running 16.4.33 and you're running 16.3.x or 16.1.x, you can generate and apply templates from inside the web console, but you cannot edit them. So if we go to configuration, manage templates, see here's one that's 16.3.32. It's grayed out, so you can't edit it. And so in those mixed environments, as you transition, you're going to move over to using the web console 16.4. But until then, you'll stay in the MMC and you'll edit it over there. Just to show you real quick. So like, let's say we wanted to edit this template from in here. You just click edit. Then here's all your icons. And then earlier we showed this display one. So you're going to get something that looks like this to set your display up. So back to the automation stuff, I promise. So if if you make a group, so you right click, you would go to new and you go to group, which I've done here. You'll be presented with these two tabs. You set up filters. In this case, I've just done a single filter to grab the specific MAC address for my demo unit that I'm using. But if you have, let's say, an IP scheme set up so that you have like one floor has this IP range, another floor has this subnet, you can add that in here. You can filter by computer name. So if you have a logical naming scheme, maybe all the accounting units start with A, C, C, T, or whatever it makes sense for you guys. You can filter by that. So you set your filters up in some kind of logical way to get your units into the group. The purpose of the groups, for the most part, other than making it easier to manage your units, is to do some of this automation stuff so that you can logically manage these units. You can set up auto naming. You can do automatic firmware updates. In this case, we've been talking about doing the templates. So if you check this box for automatic client configuration, and you go to edit configuration, it's that same message about templates merging. You click add. We can go and grab that same demo test template. This guy right here, new demo temp 16.4.33. You can say okay. Then you brought it in here. And you see there was a previous one in here before this guy that I was playing with. So let's let me just delete it then. Do this. Let's go remove. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to do just a single template. So we're going to set this. We're going to say okay here. Say okay. And the manager is going to check in periodically whether or not it needs to apply that template. But the other thing that we can do is force it. So if you right click here and then you go down to re-register client, that's going to check for any jobs that it needs to do. And you'll see, boom, it gets queued. It's sending the config down to the unit right now. It's succeeded and done. Force the refresh. Yep, and there it did it anyway. So you see test template 16.4.33. So it makes it super easy to make changes. If you pull an old unit out of the closet, let's say, like we talked about earlier, and you have these filters set up in here so that it'll grab that new unit, you can set it up to be auto-named, push the new firmware that you are currently using out to the unit, and then give it a configuration. So kind of automates that stuff for you. Pretty nice. Yeah.
With new deployments, it completely automates that process so that you just have to configure a single device, and then for the rest of your devices, just basically roll them out onto the network, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah, we like to say as long as you have someone that can plug the cables into the right spots, and you've set this up in advance, then you can do your deploy. That's it easy as that. Yeah. So that's that. So we talked about that.
What about a single device making a change locally on that one unit?
Yeah, okay, let's talk about that. So it's open the bar, we got edit config. So that'll bring up this. Similarly, you can do it from the menu itself. So configuration and then edit. So do this though. So this is what I always say. So make sure that you, before you go and edit it, make sure that you retrieve that configuration, because like we talked about, you don't necessarily have the latest. So let's retrieve it. Super fast, and we're done. We have the new config, the latest config. Right click, configuration, edit. So then this is that configuration. So if you need to change something on the fly, then you can do it from within here. So let's do this. Let's go into security applet. And then let's say that you want to change the password. So right now I got it super secret, password 1, exclamation point. So let's change that to password 2, exclamation point. And Zig suggests you pick better passwords, but for our demo, we'll make
Keep it simple.
Yeah, although I fat fingered that second one, so let's make that better. Point. I knew why it was red. So, all right, so then we click save. Then all we got to do here is click send. You'll see down here, see how it says send client configuration, and it sent it down there to the unit. So watch. So if we go configuration, retrieve, that proves that we just pulled in the latest config from the unit. And we go edit, security. Let me check our password. It's now that password 2 with an exclamation point. So super nice, right? I mean, if you need to just do an ad hoc change, to instead of having to rebuild an entire template, that's not necessary, right? You just need to do one change. Maybe this is a power user, you have somebody super important or whatever, a one-off to test something, and you can do it all from the console that fast.
Maybe is it worth showing that local screen on the client side as well to see how it is one-to-one look and feel to what we're looking at now within the web console?
Yeah, good point. So just as a comparison, we'll jump back in here. So we'll go edit, just to kind of show you that the screens do look similar between the two GUIs. So if you go in here, kind of take a look at what the security settings look like. So basically you got some check boxes here, and you got your two little password guys, password fields. So jump out of this. So we're not going to send the config because we didn't make any changes. But then let's VNC into that unit. It's another super popular feature is that you can jump into a unit and you'll see exactly whatever the user is seeing. So if they're in a session, you're going to see that they're in a session. If they're not in a session, then you can see locally. So this unit isn't locked down. So that's the reason why we're able to get into the control panel. It does prompt you though. Put our password in. We're going to go into the security settings. And you'll notice this looks the same, right? You have some check boxes. You have some fields. This is all the same stuff here. So and that's the
Identical to what
idea.
we saw in the web console.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the idea, right? That we're trying to get across is that this is across the board from whether you're in the manager or you're on another product. We're going to have similarities across everything to try and make it easy to manage if you have a mixed environment or mixed use case. Out of that. Back over here. So we also have some other new features I wanted to show you guys. So if you right click on a unit and go to download logs, this is that one that we were talking about, and you click this and you give it a name, or you can use a default name with the date here, timestamp. And you say okay. Watch how fast this is and easy. See, boom, it's done. So what that's done is it's downloaded the log files from the unit and it stuck them in your image store under I believe it's log_files. You'll see the directory in there. So that's a fancy dancy new feature, isn't it?
Good.
Another new feature that we have is the last user feature. So you'll see here we have various different users that have logged in. This is the last person to log into that unit. And again, you have to enable this. So if you right click, you go down here, there you go, right here. So you'd have to enable that field. If you can see it by default, that's not on. That's a VMware feature at this point that you can see the last user logged in. All right, so another feature I wanted to show you guys was the new system message feature. So if you right click on the unit and you go to add scheduled task, and we'll just give this task a name. So we'll call it sys message turn off. We're going to tell these users to turn off their unit for the evening. So you select display a message as the action. So we've given it a name for the scheduled task, which is sys message turn off. And we said, hey, we want you to display a message, scheduled task. So let me click next. And we can choose different boxes here if you wanted an info or warning, or you can ask them a question. In this case, let's title it, let's say like turn off unit. We'll show in the title, and then we can pick a message here. So we'll expand that. We'll say, hello, please turn off your unit tonight. Thanks. You say okay. Then you just choose the schedule that you want this to show up. So you can do it one time if it's just a one-time thing. If you want them to be reminded every night, you can do it daily, weekly, whatever you choose here. And again, guys, you can do this on a unit basis. You can do it on a group basis. So if you had a whole group of units in here and you right click and you go to new scheduled task, this is the same looking menu, right? So give it a name. You're going to say display a message, same stuff, right? You just type your message in here, say okay, and then choose your interval.
So you can go back and edit those. Is it from the maintenance menu, scheduled tasks?
Sounds right. Yep. So edit tasks. So maintenance tab, go to edit tasks, and you'll see a whole list of global tasks in there. So actually, yep. So those. And finally, I guess we already talked about this, and I'll just kind of emphasize it again with the automation. So if you go into the properties of the group under this tab, this is a super popular feature. It's really great because it just, anytime you can automate anything in IT, it's just wonderful. And so you can, like I said, if you pull a unit out of the box that's been sitting on the shelf because you just need to get this user back up quickly and then figure out what happened later. And you have these set up correctly, boom, they get the firmware they need. They're going to get auto named, and then they're going to get their template.
That's good. One last feature, I guess, for the web console, which is a differentiator from the MMC console, which is useful, is the summary screen.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
Yeah,
like, we were going to do that. Yep, let's do that. So let's show you guys the summary screen here. So if you click the summary tab up here, you guys are going to really like this. Look at this. We can get data out of the 10seg manager now. You could choose how you want to consume that data with a line graph. You get bar charts here, right? Or the old school pie charts. Make this bigger if you like. So this by default is showing you different models. And obviously I have a ton of different models because like I'm always testing stuff and looking at different things. Yours will probably be a somewhat simpler graph, but it's nice if you, I mean, sometimes these questions come up. You can add new views. So you have all these different views that you can add. Windows client information too, if you happen to have a mixed environment where Windows clients are required for certain use cases.
Yeah, using the firmware version window, that's quite a useful one for seeing across your organization what levels of firmware are deployed.
Oh yeah, sure. So let's do that. Add view. Or do we have that? No, that's right. We have that already, don't we? Yeah, this guy here is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, that's good.
So you can also export this. So CSV, PDF document if you like. So point being that, you know, web console's coming along, and so we got a lot of new stuff here that that you can use.
No, that's good, Matt.
All right, so that's gonna wrap it up for the demo portion at least. Don't go away. Don't go away. We have some more stuff to say, right? And of course, we have our contest going on, so don't leave quite yet. But yeah, that's kind of a demo of a lot of the new features that are coming along with our HTML GUI, and of course, moving over to interacting with the units in the web console. So thanks, guys.
So, you back in the room, Stuart?
We
You're
are.
back.
We're back in the room.
Good. So thank you for that. I really appreciate you and Matthew putting together that content and then presenting it. I hope it's been of real value to people who've been on the session today. Before I hand over to you for the Q&A, I just wanted to run one quick last poll, because I noticed on one of the previous questions there were a number of people who weren't currently using Tenzig devices. So I've just put a quick poll on the screen to see if anyone would like to receive a Tenzig demo device to test in your own environment. We'll just wait for those answers to flood in. That's it. Give another 5 seconds. Brilliant. Right. So I will hand over to Stuart now for the Q&A. From a marketing point of view, we'll be in touch with you in the coming days to send you a recording of today's session and also to announce the winner of the $100 or equivalent, depending on where you're based, Amazon gift card. But thank you from me, and I will hand over to Stuart as my time as glamorous assistant is up.
Thanks, Tom. So yeah, just say Matt did some great content there, gives some detail of what Tenzig's been working on and a demonstration of some of those features. So that will obviously continue through 2023 with more coming from us. So having a look at some of the questions and answers, basically, just one thing to note is that if I don't get to all of these Q&A questions, we will be sending them after the session. So we will send an anonymous list of them, just in case there is anything in there that you're interested in seeing. So we have got, starting off, changes not requiring a reboot. If the changes need a reboot, will the administrator know before applying any changes? So with the HTML GUI now, pretty much any configuration changes are done on the fly. So you shouldn't need to actually reboot the device at that point. The only time you'll still need to do reboots really is either through the firmware update, or if you're looking to factory default the device to its original settings. Curious if we will have the ability to push out apps from the web console. So from the web console, you can push out your firmware updates to the Linux operating systems as normal, similar to the MMC console. If you're talking about Windows 10 IoT client packages, Windows 10 devices will still be managed through the MMC console, so you will still continue to use the package manager feature through there to be able to push those out. There's also, is the cloud connector updated or is it the same as before? So the cloud connector component of the Tenzig Manager Suite operates in exactly the same way as it has done previously, so no changes there. We are interested to learn if the Tenzig has capabilities to duplicate monitors for a multi-monitor implementation. You can choose to either extend or duplicate your displays. So that's just done through the display applet available through the control panel in any of the Linux operating systems, NOS, PeakOS or repurpOS. I have 6148V NOS clients running 16.3.33. Is there going to be a new version for those? So yes, currently we've got the PeakOS 16.4 firmware available on our firmware download area of the website. If you're wanting repurpose 16.4 firmware, then for existing devices, contact your relevant Tenzig support team. If you're looking for new devices or demo devices to deploy to, then contact the equivalent sales team. But for NOS itself, we will be releasing a new 16.4 firmware. There's no specific date set yet, but it will be soon. So with that, keep an eye out on the firmware download section on our website, or alternatively, make sure that you've signed up for the tech email notifications, which is available on the support FAQ page, again on the website. So does the update HTML button look to somewhere locally on the manager server or from the internet? Yeah, so this is used between the Tenzig manager server and the clients, basically just to update the XML configuration templates dependent upon the firmware that's actually being used on the device at the time. So it doesn't actually look out onto the internet to any other external location. It is solely between the Tenzig manager server and locally the Tenzig clients. Does repurpOS support Chromebooks? Chromebooks are a little bit tricky, so the best thing to do with those is to obviously test it during any proof of concept process. With some Chromebooks, depending on the vendor, they are actually write protected from re-imaging and may need some actual physical hardware modification to be able to allow for that. So with that, it would just be a case of making sure it is tested as part of that POC. How many of these features are available to the Windows clients? Not many is the answer to that one. So the HTML GUI is exclusive to our in-house Tenzig Linux-based operating systems and the Tenzig Manager. And the other features that we talked about today with the download log files, the system messages, the last user logged on, they again are primarily for the Linux-based operating system. So unfortunately, these don't really benefit our Windows-based customers. Will we be getting access to the recording afterwards? So it looks like possibly some people had some audio issues. So yes, the recording will be available on our website and also available on our YouTube channel. When will 16.4 be available for download? So I've discussed that a moment ago. So there's no specific date, but keep an eye out on the website firmware downloads page or sign up for those tech email notifications. Are the add-ons included in the next firmware, or do we need to request them separately? So for the add-ons, again, these are available now on our website. So if you have a look on the menu underneath firmware downloads, there's a new option there for firmware add-ons. So if you go to that page, you'll just have to fill out a simple form, and then it will give you direct access to be able to download those add-ons for you to then deploy. Why would all of the last users fields not populate, meaning only some have last user information, but I know users have logged into other stations? So this for this, you just need to make sure that your devices are all running firmware that supports this feature. So they should be running as a minimum 16.3.33 for NOS, or for PeakOS, repurpOS is 16.4.31. On the Tenzig Manager side of things, you should be looking to use the 5.1.0.0 available on our website. And again, this feature is only specifically for the VMware Horizon sessions, so it is not available for all platforms. And I think that pretty much covers the majority of them. So with that, we will wrap up the session. And from me, thank you everybody for joining today. Hope you all had a happy new year. and have a good 2023, and watch out for what Tenzing will be doing next.
Yeah, thank you very much, Stu, and thanks for joining everyone.
Thank you.